Taking back America, one consumer at a time. It's the Krieger Files.
Okay, we are back after the long break here, and Fred Dashevsky joins us. He is a member of the American Numismatic, get that out there, Numismatic Association, and he's a lifetime member of the South Carolina Numismatic Association, as well as an authorized NGC and an authorized PCGS dealer. Fred, what do these acronyms stand for?
Lots of acronyms, right? Every industry has to have its acronyms.
I know. IDK. I don't know. What does NGC and PCGS stand for?
Well, there are two grading services in the coin industry that were established after about the early 1980s. The purpose of them was to provide a balance of grading services that were independent of dealers. So in the old days, before the 1980s, if somebody bought a numismatic coin, and that's a coin that had some value more than just the metal it was made of, part of its value came from its condition. And, like any other item, that condition should be determined by somebody who's not involved in the transaction. But the coin industry had not evolved to that level until the investors began to really overtake the market in the early 80s, especially Shearson Lehman when they came to market. They wanted to participate heavily in investing in gold and silver coins. So these two independent grading services were developed in order to provide the individual person with the ability to have their coins graded by a third party. So now the way the market works, any legitimate dealer will only offer coins to their customers that have been graded by a third party, independent of the buying and selling of coins. So we've established these two services. The top of the tier is NGC, which is the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation of America, and it's followed by PCGS, a very close second. Both are very good grading services. PCGS is the Professional Coin Grading Service.
Wow, that's amazing. See, now you learn something new every day, folks, because I didn't know what those acronyms meant until, yeah, that's right. You got to find this stuff out. Now, here's the thing. Shearson Lehman, you brought that up. Now, why, all of a sudden the banks, they've been doing this. Chase has been, this is the rumor we heard a long time ago, Fred. You may be able to shed some light on it, but at one time I was getting all sorts of emails in my inbox saying that Chase was trying to short the silver market. Did you ever hear anything like that?
Well, sure. A lot of the big investment banks over the years have taken very large positions through contracts on silver and gold to either go long or short the market, depending upon what would benefit them. Sometimes they do this on purpose, and if you think about it as a process, let's say you wanted to buy a very large amount of silver. Well, the best opportunity for you would be to get the best price. Now, what if you could actually manipulate the price by shorting the market with such a huge volume of contracts that you actually depressed its price around the market? Then you step in and make your purchases, buy it now at the cheaper prices, and then you let your contracts go, so suddenly the market floats back up to where it was before you applied that pressure. So this is a game that's been played by a lot of the big banks for decades, and they have manipulated the gold and silver markets over the years by using these option contracts in order to provide themselves with opportunities to sometimes, make a purchase of the metal. So, yeah, this is something that's been going on for quite some time.
Well, now, see, this is another truth that most people don't recognize, which is why I brought it up. Because if they're manipulating the market and they're manipulating market price, we also have to look at the other end of the spectrum, and that is supply and demand. Because do you believe, Fred, you've been in this game a long time, over 40 years. Do you believe these people that are manipulating the markets right now understand where we, the people, if we're going to go out and buy gold and silver coin, and I buy junk silver, dimes, quarters, and halves, all pre-65. I stay away from the Morgans and whatnot and the peace dollars because, most of what I have, like I say, are junk silvers. And, if you were to grade my peace dollars and my Morgan dollars, I could tell you wouldn't be giving me a whole lot of money for them. So a lot of people actually use these coins and put them in their pocket as stress coins, and they would rub these things until they rub the faces off of them. So I got to wonder whether or not people realize what is going on in the silver market as far as what happened back in the 80s when Shearson Lehman was doing this, to what's happening now in the early millennia where Chase is doing this, to what's going on right now with what people expect to pay plus the premium when they buy gold and silver?
Well, we've had a lot of this happening, again, as I mentioned, for quite a long time. So, this is really not a new thing that's been happening within the physical silver and gold markets. And, what people need to recognize is that we've always known that there was a vested interest among central banks or sometimes the banking industries themselves to suppress the price of gold and silver. The Federal Reserve has done this for many, many years because the reflection of the U.S. dollar and the gold markets are sort of like mirror images of each other. So you could say that the price of gold is a mirror reflection of the relative strength of the U.S. dollar around the world. The weaker the U.S. dollar is perceived to be around the world, the more expensive it becomes to buy an ounce of gold. So there are several factors that influence the price of gold around the world on a regular basis. You have the central banks, of course, their purchases, and if they increase their buying, which, as you mentioned, a lot of the banks around the world, China, Europe, Asia, and the U.S. have all been accumulating gold in the last several years in a very large amount. They've been adding to their positions physically. You also have the manufacturing of gold and silver, which reflects how much mining is actually going on. So are we producing enough of the physical metal just by sheer mining to meet the current demand? And if those things get askew, one of your favorite words, then we see a reflection, of course, in the price. If the demand for gold and silver is outstripping the mining ability, then we're going to see a price increase. So people pay attention to that. You also have the investors that are the people accumulating physical gold and silver, and that demand may change from time to time as people's perception of the need to own gold and silver vary. Right now, there is a growing and growing and growing demand from investors all over the world to own physical gold and silver. And again, we are fortunate in America since 1971. We do have legal authority as citizens to own physical gold. And I've always said I really believe people should take advantage of that legal authority and do that wholeheartedly. And then, of course, you've got jewelry demand, which varies from country to country. So all of these things influence the price of gold. But on the outside of that, again, you have the big players. And honestly, Dave, these guys are just so large that an individual person has like zero chance to have any effect on what's happening in the markets. And this is why I've always said we can talk about where gold prices may be a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But if you want to talk about where it's going to be tomorrow or within a week, it becomes nearly impossible because the variables that affect its price, they change from day to day, and they're affected by things that are quite large and really out of the reach of an average investor.
And so now the headline that I just pulled out, an article by Peter Schiff, Trouble Ahead. And that, boy, as soon as I saw that headline, I'm thinking, Casey Jones, you better watch your speed. Wow, the gold-oil ratio is inching back up. Did you see that article?
I didn't see the article, but I know what he's talking about. Gold prices have been climbing while the oil prices have been drifting downward. And, it's interesting that people can make relationships between these commodities and say, we can look at one versus the other and start to try to extrapolate what that might mean for future prices. So I know Peter Schiff has been a huge bull on gold for decades. I mean, I remember him from, I think back in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken. And he has always touted the idea that he thought gold could explode at any moment. He was one of the first people I ever heard who talked about gold hitting, thousands of dollars an ounce back when it was in the $300 to $500 range. He was talking about $3,000 to $5,000 gold back then. And his expectations have always been that, we're on the precipice. At any moment, these dynamics that affect the price of gold and silver could absolutely tip the scales. And, we're any point away from having any of these variables become problematic enough to where there could be a substantive change in the price of gold and silver very quickly. So I've been following him for quite a while.
Now, what about John Del Vecchio? Have you been following him? Because now he's putting out articles for H.S. Dent. That would be Harry Dent Publishing. And they are still advocating playing in the markets. And I think we've already decided that you know, he says it's a matter of opinion. Most people will think it no longer works. They jump from one thing to the next with no strategy whatsoever. So it's a game of whack-a-mole. In the end, you lose. I mean, we've always said, he's got this book out, Unbounded Wealth. And the problem is the wealth. If you're going to play the stock market, understand who you're playing against. You're not playing with anybody. You're playing against people. I mean, this is the thing that bothers me about playing in the markets versus owning something concrete instead of something that's, you know, basically ether until you cash it in. What's your take on that?
Well, you know, I remember listening to Warren Buffett when he would describe how he would invest in stocks. And he was from the school, which is a fading a number of people now that exist, that used to actually look at a company and say, if I'm going to invest in company X, well, then I want to know what they are. I want to go visit them. I want to see the manufacturing plant. I want to talk to the people who work on the floor. I want to get a good sense of the product. How does the public respond to the product? And then make my decisions.
Yeah,
but
you got to
now,
love that.
What we mostly have are speculators.
We got people that say you need to play the markets, and I'm like, no, get out of that and start investing in gold and silver. Fred, you've got some stuff going on over where you are regarding some specials. Can you?
I do. I'd be happy to.
Nice lead up, huh? Yeah.
Throw me that softball. Whack it right over the center field. Yeah, so, you know, I'm always looking for opportunities to find spots within the market that look like they're good buying opportunities. And as the price of gold has been going both, you know, up and down, but climbing steadily, every once in a while we find some interesting spots. So what I did is I acquired a supply of $10 gold pieces. So these are half-ounce size coins that were minted up through 1907. After that, there was a design change, and they became Indian head. These are the Liberty head, so they are pre-1907. I have up to 50 coins available. We had submitted all of them to the grading service we previously mentioned, NGC, because they are the strictest standard for grading. They've all come back in mint state 63, which is a mint condition coin, meaning it has absolutely no wear of any details originally struck. Has a few little surface scratches and some contact marks. They're not flawless or perfect. The ones that are higher in grade literally cost thousands of dollars more. And I am discounting these by $100 for your listeners only. This is a special for your listening audience at $1,675 each for the $10 Indian gold head, $10 Liberty gold pieces in mint state 63. And we have just shy of 50 coins left available. I think this is a great way for somebody who wants to enter the gold market. You know, if you think about the coin itself as a half ounce of gold, you know, even the gold content represents 80% of its value. So it has very little numismatic value, yet it's a coin that has not been minted since 1907. And all these are prior to 1907 in date. They're beautiful, lustrous coins that we've hand-selected. So they're not just coins that have been graded. They're ones that we previewed after the certification was done and picked out the best examples that exist. I think it's a fabulous way for somebody to enter the market in a very affordable fashion.
Now, looking at this, Fred, because we're talking about $1,675, basically it's $100 off. Now, is this a situation that includes premium? Is it part of that?
That's everything all included, including shipping.
Oh, my.
People can do this with their credit card, no additional fees. If they are calling from you, I will do this as a service. We will provide these at $1,675 delivered to your door.
Okay, so here's the thing, folks. Understand where we're at, and if they're going to manipulate the market, let's go back to that and revisit what we talked about on the show, because this is really important. If the big boys are manipulating the market and they're driving the prices up, that means if you get one of these coins, and people usually buy and hold. I mean, this is what they do in the stock market. This is how the rich people get richer. This includes our U.S. Congress people. So if you know that the market is going to be driven up and you're talking about buying a half ounce of gold for $1,675 in mint condition, imagine what happens in 2 to 3 years if they continue to drive this thing through the roof and gold is worth $10,000 an ounce. That means you just made, you know, a bunch of money off a $5,000 coin. That would be a fair statement.
Absolutely. Yeah, these have been climbing in value. I remember when these were in the $300 to $400 price range,
Oh,
and they've been continually growing in price over the years as the demand has grown. Of course, they can't mint any more of these things, which is wonderful. Plus, these are the private type of gold. In other words, for those that are selling these, it does not require that I take a Social Security number or file a 1099-B to IRS, which I would have to do with just raw bullion. Coins of this type are free and not subjected to all those government regulations. So we have complete financial privacy. But again, I think this is a great way to hedge against a weaker paper U.S. dollar. And remember, if the stock market does begin to falter, when the stock market is going down, that is not good for the U.S. dollar because a lot of the investment money in stocks is from foreign investors. And they will convert that money once they sell those stocks back into their home currency, which leaves the U.S. dollar floating. And the more dollars that are floating, the more come back into the U.S., the weaker the dollar gets. So a falling stock market is detrimental to the U.S. dollar, and that is positive for the future growth of gold. Coins like this not only grow because the price of gold is increasing, but also because of supply and demand. When you have a fixed supply of any item and you continually grow demand, you're going to get a price increase. It's just the natural way the markets work. And since they can never make any more of these, it represents a great way to buy gold. And many people have been buying these in large quantity. I've literally had customers who bought 50 of these at a time. But you can buy one at a time. It really doesn't matter. It's just a method of trying to preserve the purchasing power. Because as you mentioned, the wealthy people always seem to be successful because they do certain things. And one of the most important things they do is they put their money to work. They don't let their money languish. And anybody who's sitting on capital, and that is a lot of Americans, because there's literally trillions of dollars sitting in the banks right now, earning less than 2% because people don't know what to do. But unfortunately, that's not a smart advent for how to provide wealth for your future because the dollars that you're holding there are deteriorating faster than the interest. So the wealthy people put their money to work. And if you're not going to put your money to work, you at least have to preserve its purchasing power in current terms. And owning gold coins like this is a great method to make sure that, even if it isn't growing rapidly and increasing dramatically in a short term, we know at least that we're providing wealth protection and preserving the purchasing power of that money. So if anything goes awry in the stock market, anything crazy happens in the world, and again, it seems like every time you and I talk, there's been another, exogenous event that's happened since last time we spoke. They're happening more and more frequently. So again, anything could tip the scales at any moment. I would rather be in this market a year early than a day late.
Well, that makes all the sense in the world, Fred. Now, here's the situation, folks. You have to understand where the economy is right now. We just reported on the housing market, and we've got certain markets right now where foreclosures are starting to increase at a rapid rate. And you have to understand that that is going to aid in the deterioration of the neighborhood as well as the value of the house. That's your equity. I mean, all these things you need to be looking at right now. If you're in one of these areas and you've got the cash to spend, to put it into gold and silver coin right now because you don't know what kind of disaster we're going to be in, do you see, and I see the economy is always tied to the politics because, as you know, since we had you on last, Jerome Powell, in his infinite wisdom, playing God over the almighty dollar, has said, well, I think now that we've screwed the economy up so bad with all this borrowing of money, I think we need to lower the interest rates, duh. Where do you see all this going?
Yeah, I definitely see the Fed is trending toward this reducing interest rate cycle now. At least at one point, we should get about a 25 point basis drop in the interest rates. The Fed is facing a real problem here because they've overprinted since COVID. They know that they've flooded the streets with money, and the problem is they're walking a tightrope. So if the economy is running too hot, they have to raise interest rates to slow it down. If it's not moving fast enough, and we got the jobs report this morning, it's pretty much in line with what they expected, but it didn't tip the scales one way or the other. But it leaves Jerome Powell in a very precarious position. He has to try to, finesse this to the point where he stimulates enough economic activity by keeping rates low, but doesn't spin the economy into a recession. And if you spin the economy into a recession, the only thing you can do is plummet interest rates, which we've just been through that. So we're going through these cycles of rising and lowering of rates. I think at this point the Fed is going to end up probably only making one rate drop this year. I know, again, since January, there were people that expected 4 rate drops by now, and we haven't even had one yet. So I think we'll probably get one this month. And again, 25 basis points, not a big deal one way or the other. But again, the Fed has got to manage this. They call it a soft landing. It's, manipulating it just perfectly. And if they screw up one way or the other, they could create real economic upheaval. So I would be prepared for the worst and hope for the best.
Well, yeah, and see, that's why people are investing in gold and silver coin right now, because they don't trust the markets. And the thing is the markets are tied to what? The dollar. The markets are not tied to gold. Now, they're manipulating gold, but they're manipulating gold because of its worth vis-a-vis the dollar. I mean, there is a correlation between the two. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're losing that battle. They are fighting hard to try to keep gold and silver prices suppressed, but they're losing, and they're not going to win that battle. In the end, the real world economics will win. They can temporarily depress the price of a commodity like oil or gold or silver, but in the end, the market will win out. That's one of the reasons I like these kinds of gold coins like this $10 Liberty, because not only is it gold, but it's also gold in a form that cannot be increased in supply. So they could mine more gold, but they can't mine more $10 gold pieces. So I think it's a smarter way to own gold.
Well, and not only that, but, and I hope you are all listening to this, it's 1-800-878-2646. I've already got that number memorized, Fred.
Yay.
Well, yeah, 1-800-878-2646, and you can talk to Fred directly. Now, I'm telling you, this is one of these things that, we can't stress enough. I'm not just sitting here pimping this because Fred's on the show. No, Fred and I go back a ways, and I can tell you right now, he has studied the economy and understands what's going on here. And if you're not doing what it takes to prepare for anything upcoming, which could be disastrous in November, a lot of people are waiting for that to happen. We can't allow it. So get a hold of uscoincapital.com or give Fred a call at 800-878-2646 and get yourself hooked up and start investing in what's going to protect your future. Fred, thanks so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure to be with you.
All righty. Sounds good. Until next time, we'll be back on Monday. In the meantime, God bless you and God bless the United States of America. What's left of it.